You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for February 25th, 2022, the week when all the twos lined up, and it's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where we consider the 4-H getting a $50 million grant pretty darn important. It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Bluegal.
I found out something about you, Driftglass. I've been married to you for a long time. I didn't know you were in 4-H.
I wasn't in for a long, long time, but I was in 4-H when I was a kid.
I was in 4-H in Ohio. Did sewing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great organization.
It is.
And really popular. And its origins are a land grant colleges, I think.
Oh, okay.
And it's awesome. It's heavy. It leans heavily on agriculture. So if you lived in the suburbs of Chicago, you didn't have a lot of agriculture to draw on necessarily. But I always thought 4-H was a fine organization. And
did you get to milk a cow in elementary school?
No, I did not.
Yes, I got to milk a cow.
Wow. Okay. See, I was deprived as a child.
No, it's just, when you live in the Midwest, I grew up in Ohio, northeastern Ohio. And when you live in this part of the country, you tend to have some experience with farmers and farming and so forth. Of course, the Democratic Party just completely ignores those people and never talks about none of them are here anymore. So
there are several of the liberals I have interacted with here go deer hunting and are responsible gun owners and are very big into outdoor activity and are very big into 4-H. And they're also like hardcore environmentalists and think the Republican Party are fucking monsters. Those are not irreconcilable ideas, nor is it uncommon to find people who believe both things. It's just that there's a fairy tale that there aren't any of us out here, just like there's no practicing Christian liberals. These don't exist. There's just the Falwells and the Robertses and the Graham Juniors, and that's it. And everyone on the left is an atheist. We love our atheist listeners, but we're not. And there's a whole lot of practicing, non-evangelizing, but very firmly believing Christians out here in the Midwest that nobody on the coast knows about because they don't believe we exist because we don't fit the narrative.
You can't see Driftglass right now, but I can see him on my screen. And he's wearing a red, white, and black plaid flannel shirt. I
am. From Carhartt. I'm a Carhartt guy. I'm looking into, because as you know, my sound booth is my closet.
Yeah.
Where I stack up my clothes, and I'm looking at my Carhartt jacket, my Carhartt hoodie, because they're the only people that have pants that fit me.
The only people that have pants long enough for Driftglass's legs are at the Farm and Fleet.
Farm and Home.
Farm and Home.
They got a Farm and Home, and they didn't have any yesterday, so I only got a couple of T-shirts. But they got the 5 pockets. They got the 4 pockets and the side pocket and the loop for your hammer. And
that side pocket is for your phone now. I mean, that's what you use it for. Yeah.
It's for all things. But this is how I live. This is how I dress. This is what I do every day. This is this is who I am. And it is really maddening to that nobody recognizes that we exist out here and exist in large numbers and have a fairly big voice, and we're just not Ohio diner residents who think Donald Trump was a great president. So we do not exist. And we are not the most invisible group of people in the world.
No, by a long shot.
Not by a long shot.
We have a lot of things going for us, and we're not just sitting here with victimhood complexes at all. But it's just an observable truth.
It is.
That the coastal media elites do not recognize that we exist or that our voice matters. And
the political consulting class are like, if only we could find a way to reach out to those working class, middle class people in the middle of America. It's just like, we're the Who's. We are here. We are here. We're right here. And you know what? We have a podcast, and we're like on our 600 zillionth episode, and we've been blogging for damn near 20 years now. And we're well read, and we're articulate, and we can deliver a winning, sharp, punchy message. And we're good at this stuff. And it is maddening Not that anybody deserves a position at the table. Not that I particularly want a position anywhere near a camera. I never wanted that for my life. That's not what I planned. But it is maddening that the intelligent, articulate, liberal voices in the middle of this country are just completely blotted out by the media that does not, because we just fuck up their whole narrative. Our existence just screws them up. It's like finding, a pocket calculator at in a Jurassic dig. It's like, oh, what the hell is this doing here? This screws up my entire idea of evolution. So we can't exist because we mess up too many people's message. And yet we are here. We are here. We are here. Where do you want to start?
We should start with the big story.
Yeah, there's one big story this week. Russia invaded Ukraine, and nobody really knows anything. Actually, there are people who know quite a bit, who aren't blabbing all over the internet, which is nice.
Yeah. And we are not geopolitical experts.
No.
And so the only comment that I have about this is thank God Biden's president.
Exactly.
And also that there is a backlash to Putin on this already, in that he has united NATO and put the United States at the head of a coalition that is against him.
Even old
and
Europe.
a trusted leader in the United States.
Yep. Who is not going to go before NATO and say, you guys are a bunch of idiots and morons and we're pulling out like Trump did. And who's not going to insult our allies by lying to them and feeding them false information about a war that we want. And then, oopsie, I guess there wasn't any WMD in Iraq, But
Trump is going to have a plan to win the war in 2 weeks.
Sure. Just like the plan to get rid of the deficit in
the
4 years.
Plan
healthcare pennies for, and there are 60 million, brain dead freaks out there who will believe it and who are already marching to that drum.
Yep.
And we can't ignore them, but we don't need to give them any more time than acknowledging that very much like horrible weather, they exist and they fuck us all up.
And meanwhile, we could go on and talk about Fox News taking the side of Putin. I think you all know that. Big mistake, in my opinion, politically and strategically, and from the standpoint of a news network. I think they're making a mistake. But let's look at one piece of very good news this week that you might have missed, and that I don't want to go under the radar. It's not related to Ukraine, but it is great news. We are winning on the congressional map front. We've had big wins in Pennsylvania and North Carolina, and Ohio is going before the court, and it looks very bad for Republicans right now. They are being held in contempt. The governor is being held in contempt of court. Yeah. Maybe Republicans should have voted for the People Act, Driftglass.
Yeah.
And just gone with the fair maps, because it would have worked out better for them.
Yeah. Well,
but they don't do that. Yeah.
No, they have a theology. It doesn't matter how bullshit their theology is. It doesn't matter how flat earth, geocentric their theology is, how screwed up it makes them, how it ruins everything they touch. They can't get rid of it, because to get rid of their theology would mean to unravel the tiny little
brainwashing
brains of everybody
start to spiral. Yeah.
And they can still do what they've always done, which is tell their people, as I say, Sean Hannity shits in their skull on a Monday and it comes out of their mouths Tuesday as gospel. And it can be the exact opposite of what they believed last week, and they don't notice anymore because they're fucking brain dead. But you can't undo the basic operating system that runs the whole thing. And that's what admitting that degree of error would do.
Well, and the fundamental belief that Democratic votes are never, ever valid.
Right. Well, this is the anti-liberal party. They don't believe, and this is something that, bloggers like us have been saying for a very, very long time, and have been saying among ourselves before blogging existed, long before that. There's no ideology that's consistent among Republicans. They don't believe in deficits. They don't believe in anything. They believe that the left is to blame for all of their problems. And everything stems from that. Everything, all the fucked up weird shit they do comes from the fact that they can't admit that none of that's true. It just isn't true. Because if they did, they would have been wrong for the last 40 years. Horribly, like destructively, ruinously, awful, wrong, just like liberals have said, and they can't admit that to themselves. So whatever liberals believe, they have to hate. So you elect a center-right Republican like Bill Clinton, who does half the shit you wanted to do anyway, could never get accomplished, and you impeach him. You elect a nice centrist Eisenhower Republican like Barack Obama, and he's a Kenyan monster who wants to destroy America. There's no relationship between the reality of the people that we nominated and elected and the hysteria these people have over it. And that's because
is this just politics as a game then to them? Is that this is their team?
This is apocalyptic politics.
Yeah.
They believe this shit. They believe you and me, Bluegal, are the devil. That we are here to destroy everything they love. And they only listen to people who repeat that to them over and over again. And once you believe the other guys are here to destroy everything you love, you're willing to do anything that the man on the microphone tells you to do to stop them.
Yeah.
And they have become the very thing that they hate. They become something that we actually do have to stop, almost at any cost, because they really are wrecking this country. And there's no reasoning with them. There's no amount of bribery. You can't extend a hand without pulling back a stump.
And so you don't think that we're doing the same thing they are?
I think we are opposing the fascists the way the Axis did, or the Allies did in World War II. You know, the Nazis blamed everything on Jews and gypsies and homosexuals, etc., and built an entire filthy, monstrous, murderous ideology on hating those groups of people who had nothing to do with what was wrong with their country. And they made it so the rest of the world had to ally to destroy them. And at some point you have to say, look, the rhetoric we now use to describe the Republicans is getting a lot like the rhetoric they use to describe us, because they have become monsters. They have convinced themselves that they need to become monsters to save their country. And we've tried everything else. We've tried reasoning with them. We've tried, kicking people off of welfare, cutting the deficit to zero, running budget surpluses, outlawing gay marriages, electing, a Barack Obama who did nothing but try to negotiate, extend, beg, plead, and work with them. And the entire time, we've been doing this, they've been telling us, fuck you, fuck off, and die. So we've tried everything but destroying them. So now we have to destroy them because there's no alternative. They have left us no other choice. They have an infinite number of choices. They can just change the fucking channel. And
they can go to the country music and go to church too.
Yes, there's all kinds of things they can do.
And that has happened in the past where they've just said, "Oh, I'm just not into politics because Nixon, shit the bed, so I'm going to go do Up With People and Est." That was what the 70s were.
There are all kinds of ways out of the rabbit hole, the spider hole they've dug for themselves. They don't want to take any of them. They want, and this is where we get a little bit religious here, but not in an evangelical way. Conservatism is, like Christianity, a supersessionist faith. Christianity cannot exist except in fulfillment of Jewish prophecy. That is the extent of Jesus' ministry. Jesus is here to fulfill the prophets. Jesus is here to fulfill the law. And so you can't have Christianity without Judaism. Conservatism exists only to oppose the left. They don't have an ideology outside that. They don't believe anything outside that. We exist to, save the planet, save clean water, clean air, healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. They exist to hate us. That's the only ideology they have.
Or to hate brown people, or to hate.
Sure.
I mean, it's not. When you say us, you mean
us. Well, the
progressive
vast
society.
Coalition of everybody else who isn't a nut job right wing idiot, and they exist to oppose us. I mean, Bill Buckley said something like this 60 years ago. The conservatism is standing athwart history screaming stop. But they can't exist without hating somebody. It isn't in them. They don't know what to do. They hated the Russians and the Soviet Union, and then they hated Bill Clinton, and then they hated Muslims.
Well,
and
hippies,
now
don't forget hippies.
Oh, hippies. No, hippies. And they can't function without an enemy to despise. We can. We consider poverty to be an enemy, and environmental degradation to be an enemy, and racial injustice to be an enemy, to be overcome by the democratic process. They consider us as a group to be monsters, to be destroyed at any cost, and it doesn't matter how successful they are.
It doesn't matter that at any cost thing came up in a Republican primary ad this week in Toledo, Ohio. this jackass decides to bring images of the squad and a shotgun, carrying a shotgun. I'll do whatever it's necessary to restore America to its greatness. He's carrying a shotgun. Republican primary is going to be lit.
They're going to be lit, baby. They're going to be lit.
And one thing we didn't put in our notes, and this goes right along with what you had to say, is...
I'm sorry. I can't do anything outside of our notes. It just blows my mind. I'm completely scripted, as you know.
Rick Scott. Rick Scott decided to issue a contract on America.
A manifesto.
A manifesto for the Republican Senate, which Mitch McConnell is really not wanting them to do. He really just wants to run against Biden.
Yeah.
And scoop up as many seats as he can and win by attrition. You know, that's McConnell's path.
But Rick Scott decided to put it in writing.
Rick Scott decided to be an idea man, Driftglass.
Yeah. Not since Timothy McVeigh put it all down on paper has right-wing ideological madness been so well articulated in such a short period of time.
We have to build the wall. And CRT.
That's 5 points.
And by the way, everybody should be paying income taxes, no matter how poor you are, because then you have skin in the game.
Fairness. What about payroll taxes? I don't know what those are. I've never had a fucking job in my life.
I've never had, someone else deals with the direct deposit. My accountants deal with that. Yeah.
Look, I got all my money through Medicare fraud.
Medicaid fraud.
Medicaid fraud. All right. I got my money the old-fashioned way by ripping off old people and sick people and poor people.
And he's doing it again. This tax quote-unquote plan he has will have a serious impact on seniors.
Yeah.
Who live on pensions and Social Security because they don't have a paycheck. And they don't, if all you live on is your pension and Social Security, you don't pay income taxes.
Right. That's right.
And he's saying, but you ought to put in your fair share. Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. You haven't paid enough during your entire life.
You haven't paid enough.
Right.
And so, of course, Rick Scott comes out the next day and says, I didn't really mean that part. You're misinterpreting. That's what he said. You're misinterpreting my plan.
My political enemies will use math against me.
Will use what I wrote on paper.
Yes. Look, the sign clearly says, no shirt, no stats, no service. Okay?
Yeah,
You're not supposed to get all statistical on me and like math and shit. Like that, my base doesn't understand numbers at all. So
and the one person who called this out, Jennifer Rubin, she just shook her head. She just shook her head and she said, I just don't understand the political suicide of it all.
Well, but we do.
But we do.
Here's the thing.
And she does too. She does too. She said this is a bunch of Fox News talking points. And it's just there to get that particular base riled up. Yeah.
And the macro at the beginning of every column and every podcast from that sector of the media, the Never Trump sector, is, can you believe?
Yeah, right.
And, of course we can. Of course we can. Oh, my God, I've been fighting against this for over 2 years. I'm exhausted. It's so exhausting. You know what?
Why won't people listen to us after long last?
Yeah. Like, oh, Jennifer. I have something to tell you that you're not going to want to hear.
I hate to break it to you.
I have. Let me come. Why don't you come up to my house and I'll show you my blog. And you'll find all kinds of fascinating things here that sound exactly, and I mean like rip off exactly, like plagiarism exactly. What's coming out of the mouths of Steve Schmidt on MSNBC every day. I don't know if you know this, but the Republican Party is a corrupt institution. That you don't most people don't understand this, but I, Steve Schmidt, understand this because I helped build a fucking machine that's now destroying this country.
Yeah, because the $5,000 refrigerator you're sitting in front of was paid for with political ads to those people. Yes, right.
But my good friend Nicole Walls here is never going to ask me about the many times I've shit the bed in public, so I get to sit here and the audience goes, oh, God, thank God, someone finally telling the truth.
Finally.
Steve Schmidt should get his own show. My God, there's not enough people like Steve Schmidt on television. And I just go, and which leads me right, believe it or not, I didn't intend to segue that, but this
it's a good segue.
To Joe Walsh. That's Crazy Joe
Walsh. He's from Illinois, by the way.
He's an Illinois guy, which we've talked about once or twice. don't recommend necessarily ever going to listen to any of these podcasts that I listen to, but I find them interesting because they tell me so much about what's going on unintentionally among our allies, what they're really thinking, what they're really doing. And I have a post that's not even really well written yet called Joe Walsh and the Rage of Tantalus. And Tantalus was a figure in Greek mythology who served up his son, as a meal to the gods. And the gods didn't like that very much. So they stranded him in Hades in a pool of water near a fruit tree. And every time he reaches for the water, it goes away. And every time he reaches for the food, it's just out of his reach. So he's starving and dying of thirst, except he can't die because he's in Hades, between water and food. And that is where Joe Walsh is right now. And that's where most of these Never Trumpers are right now.
Is that because he can't get on MSNBC?
Yeah,
that's
pretty much what it comes down to. And it's examining him. And what he did this week was have his own campaign director when he ran against Trump, his suicidal attempt to, primary Donald Trump, had her interview him as him. Joe, why do you believe this? And Joe, why do you believe that? And there was a lot of self-aggrandizing and egomania and, my destiny. But there was also this kind of level of accidental honesty that I compare him to like a schlock film director, like a guy named Mark Polonia, who directs shitty movies, dozens of shitty movies, the fast, cheap movies. Just a few of them are Dune World, Empire of the Apes, Revolt of the Empire of the Apes, Invasion of the Empire of the Apes, Amityville Land, Bigfoot versus Zombie, and Jurassic Prey. All of which are clearly attempting to replicate, with no budget and a shitty script, better movies. And that's what Joe Walsh is. He's a schlock knockoff version of the Never Trumpers you see on MSNBC. He's the same gripes and the same grievances and the same mental contradictions that he can't reconcile and doesn't really want to, the same blind spots, but he hasn't been able to touch them up and smooth them out for a general audience. It's just all raw and weird and out there, which I find fascinating because it really does sort of like dump the actual, what's really going on behind the eyes of all these people on television who have colonized cable news with their very well-considered Never Trump opinions and why they believe the stupid shit they believe. And Joe Walsh just says it out loud. He truly believes he deserves a huge audience. And by deserve, I mean he believes God has called him to have a big audience to talk to. He doesn't believe that God has called him to do anything or believe anything. He just believes God means him to have a huge number of people who will listen to him. So when that was taken away from him, he lost his shit and quit the GOP. When he was told by Fox News, you can't be on here anymore because you talked shit about Trump, he quit the party. When the radio people said, you gotta really tell your audience that Trump is great, and he says, no, I don't want to. I want to say whatever I want to say. They fired his ass. And so now he is out there seething with rage that no one will give him what he believes God wants him to have, which is his own television show or own radio show. And he has this unvarnished loathing of the Republican Party that's, I believe, perfectly honest. And he's very blunt about the fact this shit is awful. It's been going on for years. I was part of it. It's just a fucking mess. They're a bunch of fascists. You can't save this party. They're dead, 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 dead. Okay, that's great. But he's still adamant that he's a libertarian conservative and that one has nothing to do with the other, whatever the fuck that means. And he's adamant that MSNBC is just as bad, just as extreme left as Fox News is the extreme right, because neither of them will hire him. And the fact that, fuck you, Joe, MSNBC doesn't hire liberals. They hire Nicole Wallace and Steve Schmidt and Matthew Dowd and Charlie Sykes. And basically anybody who works at the Bulwark has a free seat there. They hire lots of people who are just like you, Joe. They're just better at towing the MSNBC party line, which is, this all started 5 years ago. And both sides are equally to blame. So like every other fucking Never Trumper, you can hear him thrashing and raging and screaming about the injustice of it all. And I don't doubt that he believes every word of it. But he wants to find a center lane, a third way that isn't the extremes of MSNBC on one side and Fox News on the other. He can't let go of his identity as the right-wing guy, the conservative guy, just like Sykes can't and Schmidt can't. They cannot let go of their core belief that they grew up with, which is where he started this podcast, which is liberals are to blame for everything. Liberals are bad. We cannot acknowledge liberals are good. We can't acknowledge they were right. So that's on one side. But Trump is clearly evil and monstrous on the other. And we created that. So since I can't acknowledge the left was right, and I can't stay with Trump, I have to invent a completely imaginary third way. And I have to imagine there are tens of millions of people out there who are centrist moderates who think somehow that Joe Biden is an extreme socialist lunatic, but Donald Trump is bad alternative too, and that there's something I can build in the middle, and there is no such thing. They can't reconcile the fact that they're just wrong. They're just wrong. And they can't give up their former identity. They can't give up their former life. So they need to invent this fictional third way, centrist way, independent way. And as we've said on this podcast, every one of these Republicans who leaves the party invents a movement. And
has a C13, has a
501c3.
tax deductible 501c3
and they're all the same
company,
movement,
right?
Which is I'm country before party, man. Third way, man,
no
independent
labels.
man, and they're all the same.
Independent.
They all use the same buzzwords, and they'll invent a completely fictional threat on the left to counterbalance the actual threat on the right, and say I'm in the middle and I can save you, and that doesn't exist as a practical political reality. It's a lie, first of all, anywhere except inside the Beltway, which is they're desperate to hang on to this fantasy that they're the ones who are the moderate middle. And that the extremes.
Well, you and I have been through this many, many times with one-on-one Republicans.
Yes, we have.
When
Absolutely,
you get them in a corner. Well, I'm much more moderate independent than constitutional conservative. I don't believe the Republican Party reflects my views.
No,
I'm a person without a party.
That's why I joined the Tea Party, because I'm a constitutional conservative, independent libertarian.
Wait a minute, Driftglass. Ostensibly, the Tea Party stood for taxed enough already.
Yeah.
Rick Scott doesn't think that's any good anymore.
Yeah, blow me. and every time they put on a new coat of paint on the same giant, stinky, racist turd, it wears off. Like in 6 months, they go, oh, well, I was never part of that. I'm this guy. I'm one of the young guns. Now I'm not doing young guns. Oh, those are all false. So Paul Ryan's my guy. Paul Ryan's a fraud. And it's weird that they never recognize that everyone they've ever believed in and trusted and said, this is the great hope and this is the future and Marco's great, every single one of them turned out to be exactly the kind of fraud or huckster or lunatic that we told them they were. They can't get it through their head that if you're on a bus, as I've said before, and on your right is a Klansman and on your left is a skinhead and there's a neo-Nazi up there, who is it that's on the wrong bus exactly?
Right. But Sarah Palin is Anne Margaret and Kitten with the Whip, Driftglass.
Yeah, Sarah Palin is the future. She's the past, and she's and every now and then these people sort of venture almost accidentally into that past.
Yeah,
they go wandering into. Remember when Sarah Palin? Oh yeah, let's not talk about that. Remember when Newt Gingrich? Oh no, let's not talk about that. Remember Rush Limbaugh? No, because that gives everything context. And context.
Bill O'Reilly?
Yeah, Bill O'Reilly. Who? I'd never heard of the guy. And context is the enemy of propaganda. And that's what they're selling. They're selling a different brand.
Here's the thing. Donald Trump won't shut up.
Oh, I know.
That was George W. Bush's gift to the Republican Party was he went off and painted.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so it was easy to rebrand after him into Tea Party.
Bush who?
And
never heard of him.
Never heard of him. Kenyan usurper and Glenn Beck become a cult of Glenn Beck. And just Bush who? We didn't know who he was. But if Trump is continually calling into Laura Ingraham and going on Newsmax and calling into AM radio and doing rallies, then he doesn't give a shit about the Republican Party. He's making money off of them. They are a grifting enterprise for him.
Mm-hmm. Well, I did a meme today. I don't know if it's a meme if nobody cares about it, but I did my quadrant of Mona Charen and Bill Kristol and Charlie Sykes and Joe Scarborough in a big red box, and the top line says, "Swear they never had the slightest clue what their own party's deranged base really thought or felt about anything." That's their alibi, right? Same people claim to possess uniquely deep and profound insights into what independents really think and feel about everything.
Right.
No, you don't. You have just admitted you don't know shit about anybody outside of your little cult. You have no idea what your own fucking base thought all these years. Or you did, and you're lying.
You did. The thing is, you did.
You did. You kind of did. You kind of knew that they were a bunch of racists, but you didn't care.
I would err on the side, with all of them, including Joe Scarborough, I would err on the side of, no, they actually are intelligent, well-educated people.
Of course they knew. They just
and
didn't
they knew,
care.
But
they didn't care.
It was convenient for them to have the cocktail party and use the base and their racism for votes and money for campaigns.
And what was the base believing and steeping in and saturated with for decades? All that time they were at their cocktail parties. What was the base believing? That the left are monsters. They were listening to Rush fucking Limbaugh every day. Never compromise with the left. The media is all a bunch of liars. They'll always betray you. Feminazis are out to get you. Negroes are stealing your jobs. And when all of this finally gelled, I mean, they really did build themselves, as I said before, a throne perfectly designed for someone like Donald Trump.
Absolutely. Especially when they decided that Jeb was going to be the campaign. He was going to be the nominee.
Oh, no. Well, if Jeb falls, we got Marco. Marco's going to save the party. Yeah. And they didn't. And
so this demagogue comes in who's willing to say on a debate stage that W didn't keep us safe.
Right. And everybody, you could hear the sound of panties bunching and people shitting themselves all up and down.
The clenching.
All up and down K Street in Washington. It's like, how you can't say that out loud. And
at a Republican debate, and it turns out Republicans really wanted to hear that.
Yeah,
because they've been embarrassed.
Right. They didn't care that we invaded the wrong country and butchered a lot of the wrong people and spent trillions of dollars.
And destroyed the economy.
Didn't care about any of that shit. They cared that they were embarrassed in front of the left.
Appeared to be losers.
Right.
Yep.
Can't have that. Can't have that.
And so, the idea that you're going to pick another Bush to come in and embarrass us again when we can simply vote for someone who isn't going to take that bullshit for us.
We can vote for someone who will stand up and read Rush Limbaugh scripts to us and tell us this is...
And he watches the same Fox News we do.
Oh, my God.
And is saying what I'm thinking.
Oh, my God. He says what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
I love this guy. And that's why he has
the same Hannity shit in his skull that you do.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why they'll never leave him.
Yes,
because he told them what you trained them to believe, which is anyone who tells you exactly what you want to hear is to be trusted implicitly. Anyone who tells you something different than you want to hear is a dirty, filthy commie liberal.
Right.
And that's why you can't trust the mainstream press.
Driftglass, we got to talk about Texas for a minute. God damn, Texas.
Now, wait a minute. We love people who live in Texas. Our podcast wouldn't be what it is today without our angel nerd who lives in Texas.
And many other Texans live in Texas, and we love them too.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the governor of Texas, who we know they hate as well.
Yeah.
Greg Abbott's had a awful week.
Yeah.
And I mean awful in terms of what's happened to him and what he's done as well.
He's a monster.
He proposed an order, put out an order that anyone who encourages or in any way supports a trans youth in school is to be investigated, and the parents are to be investigated for child abuse.
Right. Yep.
He used those terms, child abuse and trans youth, in the same sentence. And I think that he did that. I think the timing of that was to cover up for the fact that Ken Paxton has been just embroiled in a corruption scandal at the worst possible time. He faces a challenging GOP primary, and he's been lying about his corruption scandal all along. So some whistleblowers have come out and sent the scandal back into the headlines. More importantly for Greg Abbott, Bill Magnus, who is the former CEO of the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, ERCOT. You remember them? They were in the news during the deep freeze in Texas.
I remember them vividly, yes.
Yes. He testified in court on Wednesday under oath that millions of Texans received sky-high energy bills during the deep freeze based on the instructions of the governor.
Mm-hmm.
They have no one to blame but the governor, Greg Abbott of Texas, for being charged 150% of the base rate. So their electric bills and their energy bills were sky high because of the governor. And so what does he do? He comes out with this anti-trans order to get everybody upset.
Let's add in there, since it's easy to forget, that as of September of last year, I think, abortion is virtually illegal in Texas.
Yeah, and that too. Yep.
They are absolutely a medieval state. They want their peasants, burning dung instead of heating their homes. They think women are put on God's earth to produce children for the state, and anyone who doesn't adhere to the white Christian straight program should be altered, should be neutered, should be thrown into some sort of special place, because we can't have anyone who deviates from the white Christian straight Texan default that is what the state wants to be. And I think it's high time for the South by Southwest festival to get the hell out of there. Well,
and some bands and some acts are saying they're not coming after all.
No.
Because of the anti-trans order. Yeah. So we have a suggestion for Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois,
who listens to this podcast, friend of the pod.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't.
No,
but
doesn't even know he exists. No.
But I wonder if we could get a call into his budget director, Andy Minar. I bet we could.
I think we know some people that work for the governor.
I think we know some people who, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Here's our idea. And that may listen to this podcast also.
They do. They actually
You think
do.
They do? I think they do.
I think they do.
Their kids call me Granny Franny.
Yeah, we kind of know that they do. So here, we're not going to say who you are because, we don't want to get you in trouble. But here's an idea.
Your kids call me Granny Franny. So
yes.
We would like to suggest to the governor that he host a South by Southwest alternative called Mid by Midwest. And it could be a rock concert in the center of the state. We were thinking Champaign-Urbana.
Chambana, perfect place.
Perfect place. And Mid by Midwest doesn't hate women or minorities or immigrants or members of the LGBTQ plus community.
No, we welcome all those people. Yeah, they're more than welcome. Housing prices here are great.
Yeah.
We have some seasonal issues with snow.
Yeah, but if you're going to have it in August, it'll be as hot as Texas.
Yeah, well, but
not as hot as Texas in August, but it'll be hot.
But the flip side is when it gets cold here, our grid doesn't collapse. So
no, it doesn't.
We got that going for us.
Our grid does not collapse.
No.
So
while our senator is in the Caribbean pretending that
neither one of our senators went to the Caribbean during snowstorms.
No.
No. Dick Durbin and Tammy Duckworth don't play like that.
No.
So, yeah, we think Mid by Midwest would be a great concert to have. We'd love to have it here in Illinois.
And we can take the state. We can MC. I can get up there and do my...
No, you don't need to do that, Driftglass.
I would love to see you...
I remember you listening to an Ed Sheeran song.
Yes.
And saying, "Oh no, my stepdaughters are not going to be dancing at the prom to that number.
Not on my watch. No,
not on my watch.
No. Although I think you singing the freshly poured song would be a great addition to that.
Maybe in a tent somewhere off to the side,
way off to the side,
to the side,
where the parents go to sit down and have a glass of wine while the kids dance.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
We approve of that.
Hey, we got to have a Glenn Greenwald minute here.
Yeah, I just want to mention I have had contact with Cliff Schechter, which is kind of nice.
Yes,
that was kind of cool.
That was nice.
We were comparing
old
notes.
School. We've met him at an old yearly coast.
Yeah,
years and years ago. Yeah.
But he remembers you and remembers me, and he's up there. He might even have a blue check. Dare I dream?
I don't know. Yeah.
But we were comparing notes on Glenn Greenwald, and yeah, he's always been, this is a consistent pattern with him. I don't think I need to go into the whole Glenn Greenwald shtick. I have a whole bunch of stuff on my blog, et cetera. But let's just say that Mr. Greenwald is now fully aligned with Vladimir Putin's interests, as he always has been. And I assume he'll...
Surprising no one.
No. I assume he'll be all over Tucker Carlson's show, explaining why it's Joe Biden's fault or the left's fault or liberals' fault or Obama or whatever. He'll whatever the party line is at Fox News, he will gladly toe it because that's what kind of scumbag Glenn Greenwald is, and always has been, really. And for all of you folks out there who were real unhappy when I started asking questions about Glenn Greenwald's bona fides and why he kept lying and why he kept making shit up and why he kept sicking his mob on people who pointed this out and why he was such a hypocrite, fuck you. That's all I can say. I was right, you were wrong, and now I have the receipts to prove it. So, but I'm not bitter about it. That's the important thing.
So, we got to talk for a minute about Truth Social, Driftglass.
I've heard of that. Is it? It's as exciting as it sounds. Is it?
Well, Yeah, it's Donald Trump's social media quote unquote app for Apple phones, iPhones.
All right.
The rollout with Devin Nunes has been a disaster.
I thought it was a band that was going to play at Mid by Midwest, so I apologize.
No, Truth Social is not going to play at Mid by Midwest.
Okay.
Never fear, Trumpers. Donald promises a tremendous social media experience will be yours in 2 weeks. Remember we were talking about that?
2 weeks is a great number.
It'll be working out in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
This is definitely pump and dump. This is, I pumped this up. I got investors to give me money to set up something that's just not going to work.
And I'm not going to tell you who the investors are.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you. And I got Devin Nunes to be my fall guy.
He's the guy.
Again, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just the fact that the social media site clearly copies Twitter font for font, spacing, everything.
Yeah.
Their logo, it turns out, is almost an exact match for a British fleet telematics and fuel efficiency company that has used it since 2019. Business Insider is reporting that a fake, not Truth Social app called MAGA Hub, Truth Social Trump, on Android is confusing the MAGA market. It's not affiliated with Truth Social.
No.
But Trumpers are signing up for it anyway, in part because Truth Social isn't available for Android phones at all, and there is no timeline for it to ever be available on Android.
There's a joke about
such a fail.
there's a joke about if this thing ever landed on a smartphone, it would die.
Yeah.
Out there somewhere. It needs some wordsmithing, but I think we could have it.
So here's what Business Insider wrote. An app on the Google Play Store that bears a similar name to former President Donald Trump's new social media platform has been downloaded over 100,000 times by Trump supporters hoping to test the Android version of Trump's app. Listed as MAGA Hub, Truth Social Trump, the Android app was displayed as the top result for the search term Truth Social, the name of Trump's app on the Play Store. Users of the MAGA Hub are charged $28.99 for in-app purchases, though it's unclear what buyers receive.
Yeah. Well,
I know what they receive. And as I wrote, you mean Trump chumps might get ripped off by a fake app? You're kidding.
Well, I'm paying $10 a week to Twitter.
No, you're not.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Where's that money going? I was told by someone look, a gentleman from Nigeria showed up and said, I can get you out of Twitter jail, but it's going to cost you $10. Wow, it's a good deal to me.
Congressman Ted Lieu said, many people say, which is already trolling.
Yeah.
Many people say that if Truth Social can't even handle opening new accounts, how will it keep your account from being hacked? Also, the problems won't be fixed until late March. So is their staff like two people, the failed Devin Nunes and his cousin's friend, who is the coder? Yes. Even Jenna, the Trump lawyer, Jenna, made fun of Truth Social on social media. And apparently some people that are not down with MAGA went and left a 1-star review for Truth Social.
Oh, no.
On the iTunes store.
But 1 star is good, right? It's like golf, right?
No.
The lower the score, the higher, more important. It's great. You're way under par, Mr. President. You're way under par.
Yeah. And because you can't actually get onto Truth Social, even if you download the app, you're downloading code to your phone that Truth Social has access to.
That's never a bad idea. Huh? that always works out very well.
Anyway.
Wow. One last thing I wanted to add before we move on to a news roundup is I've been listening very carefully to all the savvy, smart media people who have opinions professionally for a living explain at great length about moderates and independents and how we have to, was it Mona Charen wrote at the Bulwark, you got to triangulate, got to do some triangulation, got to go back to Clinton because got to punch those hippies because, man, those independents, they're tricky.
They really want the Democratic leadership to punch the squad. They want that.
They really do. And because they hate liberals. They fucking hate liberals.
Hate brown women who have power. Yeah.
Yes. And they hate the fact that they're dependent on us to kill the monster that they created.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they don't want us to kill it the way it should be killed.
We're dependent. We white people are dependent on Tish James now. You know, the fraud case, the lawyers quit, the prosecutors resigned, because that's a very hard case to prove in New York real estate anyway. But we have to depend on Tish James and the tax. You know, it's going to be easy to prove tax evasion, but man. Well, we have to depend on her to do the job here. Yeah,
and so all of these recently former Republicans who are sitting, you know, who have colonized our media and colonized our movement and are heroes of the resistance, are obsessed with making Biden kick the shit out of the base so that independents feel comfortable. They speak on, as I said, they don't know, they have no idea what their own base thinks, but they're talking with great accuracy, an atomic level of understanding of what these independents want and how you need to beat up the squad and show yourself to be not captive of the extreme left. And I've yet to hear any of these people explain how these elusive independents would complete this sentence. Ahem. I don't want to vote for the racist, authoritarian, insurrectionist, book-burning party, but...
And you know what polls really badly, Driftglass? Book burning and tax increases.
Yeah, apparently, like 80% of people hate both of those things.
Both of those things. But and if you're done with the Republican primary and you're in the general election, a Democrat saying my opponent endorsed book burning during his primary campaign,
and to pay for his book burning, he wants to raise your taxes.
Your taxes.
What?
His party's leadership says that you don't pay enough in taxes, retirees.
And I have never heard, they speak with such absolute ex cathedra authority about what independents really want. And I've yet to hear them explain exactly where these independents come up with their ideas, where they hear about all the terrible things the squad is doing and the San Francisco school district, how they actually hear this shit when they don't hear about Donald Trump and Putin and the rest of the stuff. How they don't know any of that stuff, but they know very much about every little detail that's going on.
Intense detail, yes.
And, well, how do they know this shit? Because the only people who talk about this shit are you and Fox News. So where are they getting this information?
Yeah.
And secondly, what's the compare and contrast here? On the one hand, you have a racist, authoritarian, insurrectionist, book-burning party. On the other hand, you have what that outweighs that? That's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. My gas is up $1 a gallon. You know, I could not vote for the Nazis, but I really like my gas. You know, my milk is a little bit more expensive than it was last month. And I want to hear them explain. I want to hear them bring out these independents and have them sit down in front of me and explain, you know, I respect the fact that we used to have a democracy here, but by God, I cannot afford $4 for a gallon of gas. And I think the Nazis are going to lower gas prices. So I'm going to vote for them. And I want them to own that. But all I hear is through their intermediaries that there's this group of independents out there somewhere who have to be appeased at all costs and somehow know every little thing about AOC and know nothing at all about insurrection.
Well, I've got news for you, Driftglass. The millennial generation hearing that their trans brothers and sisters are going to be treated like their parents are guilty of child abuse for supporting them.
Yeah.
Are not going to tolerate that.
No, I hope so. I have every confidence in all of
and believe me, Junior Dude bitches about gas prices.
Sure.
He does. He bitches about gas prices because he wants to drive around.
Yes.
But he's not going to vote Republican.
No.
Because he knows what that party is. And
yes,
I think they do. I think they do. I just want to remind everybody, next Wednesday starts the season of Lent. And we are giving up despair and cynicism for Lent.
Oh.
Really?
Really? That's two of the three-legged stool that I sit on, honey.
You and I are not allowed to despair at the same time.
No, that's right.
That's always been the rule in our marriage. But,
that's right.
Giving up despair and cynicism for Lent is what we're going to try to do.
Well, especially as you have in our notes here, despair and cynicism as hallmarks of intelligence.
Yeah, that doesn't make you look intelligent, that you're cynical and full of, putting the back of your hand to your forehead and woe is me. Yeah.
I am so far above this home politics stuff. It's never going to affect me. Both parties are terrible. Everyone's atrocious. Until someone comes up with a third party that meets my exact needs and gives me a pedicure, I'm not interested in politics at all. Yeah, well, you know what? Why don't you go fuck yourself? Here's a thought. Let's move on to a news roundup with President Joe Biden announcing that new sanctions against Russia after its attack on Ukraine. This includes economic sanctions on the company building the gas pipeline connecting Russia to Germany. This crisis and Joe Biden's steady leadership have also united our NATO allies instead of, insulting them and demeaning them and trying to break up NATO and coddling Vladimir Putin.
That's right. The 3 white men convicted on state charges in Georgia for the murder of Ahmaud Arbery were also found guilty of federal hate crimes.
Tucker Carlson, who Alexander Vindman now calls Tuckio Rose, which I think is delightful, defends Putin, saying, Putin never called me a racist. The Fox News host described Putin's likely invasion of Ukraine as a common border dispute between nations. Happens all the time.
Fox News has been just nuts this week.
On fire, honey. They have
one Fox News host blamed Benghazi for the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to say Benghazi.
We've already talked about Ken Paxton's corruption scandal backfiring at the worst possible time. And we've already
we talked about Bill Magnus, the former CEO, testifying under oath that the governor did it. Your energy costs, the governor did it. Yep.
And let's talk about 4-H, shall we?
Okay, well, I just want to point out to people before we do that nothing gets people to the polls more than righteous anger. And that's what Fox News is all about, programming people to feel. Texas Republicans being corrupt as fuck while feeding evangelical culture war beast. That's what's going on here.
Yes.
And so the righteous anger has to be your power bills and your trans friends, your gay friends, your LGBTQ friends being discriminated against, and the women in your life being discriminated against.
Yeah,
have righteous anger about that.
The women in your life having their bodily autonomy stolen from them. By a bunch of medieval white men. Yep.
Exactly.
And here's some good news. And I know it's a small thing, but it made me very happy. The National 4-H Council recently announced it received a $50 million gift from writer and philanthropist Mackenzie Scott. Now that's Jeff Bezos' ex, who's worth $40 billion. So this is not a lot to her, but it's a huge amount to the 4-H. The gift from Scott, who's the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos, is the largest single donation ever to the National 4-H Council. Because of 4-H's expansive reach into every U.S. county, the investment will support youth development for millions of kids and families. This extraordinary gift is a rare and special occurrence, Krista Harden, National 4-H Council Board Chair, said. With such a significant gift comes great responsibility. She went all superhero there. Harden said 4-H will engage stakeholders to ensure the resources lift the diverse voices of young people. The gift builds upon the efforts of thousands of local cooperative extension 4-H educators, 500,000 volunteers, and millions of 4-H youth alumni and donors. The organization said the gift will sustain 4-H's commitment to ensure all young people are empowered with the skills to lead for a lifetime.
It's just a wonderful thing.
Just warms my heart, and that was something that she didn't have to do. That was something that where a multi-billionaire who, whatever else she's got going, decided, you know what, this is a really cool activity. It's helpful. It's pro-democracy. It's pro-environment. It's pro-youth. It's builds great personal and character traits. And here's a chunk of money that they can do a lot of good with. And I think that's the kind of...
she's not going to run out of money to give away anytime soon.
No.
So,
no. Not for 100 lifetimes.
This is terrific. Yeah.
Yeah.
Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an Internet Kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's Internet Kitty is Bagheera. I hope I'm saying that right. Bagheera's owner is a longtime listener from the U.S. military. And we suspect... without giving any information about this person out, we suspect this person's rather busy this week. We want to thank all service people, U.S. service people for their service. And they are very much in our thoughts, along with the people of Ukraine and also along with the people of Russia who are protesting this war.
Yeah,
the film coming out of Moscow and St. Petersburg is very heartening. And this invasion does remind me, Driftglass, of, Biden deciding that he wants more land, and so he's going to invade Ireland.
Right.
And take over Ireland because I've always wanted to own Ireland and run it. Well, and but those are our, every white person in America has Irish blood in them practically. And we don't really want to go over and shoot Irish people.
Well, and I've heard, all kinds of dumb excuses from Tulsi Gabbard and Tommy Tuberville. All the usual crackpots who are now, guest speakers at CPAC.
It's CPAC, yes. Dante's fifth circle of hell. Yes.
I have to invade Ukraine. Putin has to invade Ukraine, so he'll have a buffer between himself and NATO. Well, wait a minute. What's just beyond Ukraine once he takes it? More NATO countries.
Yeah, right.
So we'll have to take Poland then, and maybe Germany, and then where? Because NATO is all over the place. So to have a buffer, you have to basically invade the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah.
Which, is part of the intent is, as far as anybody can tell, to reassemble the Soviet Union.
Well, that was why Hitler marched to Paris, right? I mean, when is enough? Never.
Never.
Right. In this photo, Bagheera has a surprised face, which indicates perhaps that they learned this week that Sarah Palin has requested a new trial against the New York Times. What?
What? No, it's true.
And, of course, Bagheera is lord and master of all their domain and eats freshly poured cat food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve pet store perfection or dollar store dreck, your cats will sit on the kitchen floor and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured.
And remember, freshly poured is available in every country around the world.
Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh, my Lord, it's freshly poured. And Driftglass, as I was singing that, Bosco walked to the kitchen.
Yeah. Tapping his
They
little
know
foot.
That song. They really do.
That song is a promise, and it is an unfulfilled promise. So you're breaking treaties right and left.
I thought you were doing singing that song right then, Mommy. But, right. You can visit Bagheera at our Facebook page or website, and you can send your internet kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com. where you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware if you write us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go Postal Unions. Letter on the air unless you say otherwise. Hashtag get rid of DeJoy. What is it with him and not using electric trucks? Honest to goodness.
He's one of them.
Piece of work.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is our job, and we love doing this. Approximately 1% of our listeners support this podcast with a contribution, and you can too. See our website, proleftpod.com, for details. Both our PayPal, postal address information, Patreon, GoFundMe, merch, all of it is there at proleftpod.com. Please share our show on social media. And if you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen to. And we thank you so much for doing that. Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Bluegal, the Internet Kitties are jazzed that we are getting a different season here every 36 hours.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the loving, lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2022, DGBG Productions Incorporated.